Camera straight ahead.
Yep, that's it. If you stay between the plants, you're good.
Okay. Between the ferns.
Between the ferns, that's right.
Okay, I'll come on this side then.
There you go, perfect.
Okay, so my name is Ryan. I have a company called Protest Tax, protesttax.com. And before this, I'm an attorney, so it was through my law firm, but I kind of switched everything from my law office of Ryan Cohen to Protest Tax. A little bit easier for branding and red tape with the state bar. So, and I'll give you this information afterwards. My email is ryan@protesttax.com, and my phone number is there as well. And again, I'll give you this information at the end of the slide. So this PowerPoint, I don't want to bore you guys. I'm just going to run through this probably in 15, 20 minutes. I may go on, but what I found with these sessions is the Q&A afterwards. A lot of y'all have personal questions about your properties that everyone may have the same questions. So we'll open that up at the end and just kind of dive into that as well. But let's go ahead. So on the introduction about myself, I'm from San Antonio, I Clark High School. I think if you're from San Antonio, it's obligation to say where you went to high school, right? I'm a graduate of UTSA, and then I went to A&M Law School, which is actually in Fort Worth, not College Station. I began my legal practice in 2017. I worked for a commercial litigation firm right after law school, pretty soul draining stuff there, a lot of discovery work and depositions. But I bought the domain Protest Tax actually when I was in law school in 2014, I think. I had a professor come in and had a former student of his say that she did that in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I've never owned a piece of property. I was still in school, didn't know anything about protesting property values. But one piece of advice was like, if you find a good domain, buy it that represents what you want to do. I said, maybe I'll do this in the future, bought Protest Tax and ended up using it until about 4 or 5 years later. Last year, we had about $2.3 billion in market value that we protested in Texas, which is about 5,000 commercial and residential properties. So this is all that I do. Disclaimer, not legal advice. Most of what I provide to you can be found in the Texas Constitution, Property Code, Tax Code, and the State Comptroller's Office. We'll ask you. So today we'll run through the property taxes, what it's about, the introduction about property taxes, and then the calendar of how you're being taxed. We'll talk about exemptions briefly, and then we'll talk about appraisal methods. How is the district appraising your property, whether you have a single family home or a commercial property or a ranch property or whatever it might be. And then if you're going to protest yourself, how to file a protest, the timelines, how to prepare for the hearing, what you can expect, and then I'll make my pitch about how we can help as well, and then we'll have a Q&A.
So quick question before we get started. Does anybody here own property outside of Bexar County that you'd be interested in inside the state of Texas?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Because all we do is Texas right now. We have, I think we'll do any county, right? We've got 93 counties that we've done so far this past year. But that leads me to a question I forgot to ask. How many of y'all have protested your property values before? The property values? Cool. So some of y'all are pretty familiar with this process. Hopefully, you'll learn a little more. Okay, so I'll run through this briefly. Property taxes. Why is this such a big burden in Texas? Well, Texas has no state property tax and no state income tax. So you're probably familiar, no state income tax. It's great, we live here. No state property tax. On your tax bill, you don't get a line item in the state of Texas, 1%, right? So the state of Texas is not charging you property taxes. Your tax bill is made from, you're inside the city limits, city of San Antonio, Bexar County. The biggest one is the school district that you belong to, the health system, the river authority, and maybe one or two others. But those are usually smaller tax rates. So local governments set the tax rates and collect the property taxes. And that's used to provide local services like schools, streets, road, police, fire, and many other services. So for property taxes, Texas law requires that values are equal and uniform. So you want to be fair. You don't want to be paying more than your neighbor's property. And establish the process by local officials in determining the property values, which is the appraisal district, setting the tax rates and collecting taxes, which is the tax assessor. So two kind of entities working together. The appraisal district, their whole job is to appraise your value, apply any exemptions, and then once those values are certified, those values get sent over, the tax roll gets sent over to the tax assessor's office. Those are the ones that send you the tax bill. And the tax bill is just the appraised value times the tax rate, right? So when you get your tax bill, where did this number come from? well, you'll see what the appraised value is. If you have any exemptions, some of those values might be lower. And then the tax rate, again, it's about 2 to 2.5%, depending on where you live, outside the city limits, inside the city limits, etc. So the phase of the tax calendar, right? I'll run through this briefly.
Do you have a handout for this?
What's that?
You're gonna have a handout for this?
I can email you, or we can get your, I don't have a handout, but I can email you a copy of this spreadsheet, the PowerPoint if you'd like.
You all signed in and we can email it off.
Yep.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
I don't even think I have cards. I might have some cards. I rushed over it. Okay, so January 1st through April 30th, well, really through May 15th is the appraisal phase. So values are to be appraised as of January 1st every year, and that's pretty important. So January 1st of every year is when the appraisal district says, Matthew, this is the value of your property. And that's important if you're building a property, right? So if you're in the middle of building a property, January 1st, your property is 80% complete. And then, March 1st, it's done and you move in. Well, we don't want the appraisal district to value your home at 100% complete for that tax year. So it's important to make sure that they reduce that completion percentage down to 80%. So January 1st is an important date for tax purposes. So January 1st through April, or March, really, the appraisers are going into the field, is what they call it, looking at new construction, looking at any permits, and determining what your value is. And then in April, between April 1st and May 1st, usually notices of appraised values go out. So you might get that notice of appraised value if your value goes up. If your value goes down or remains the same, the district is not required to send you a notice of appraised value. So if you're waiting and waiting for your notice of appraised value to reach your mailbox before you decide to file a protest, that's not a good strategy. Because again, if your value does not go up or it might go down, you won't get a letter, but your protest deadline is still going to be May 15th. And then May 15th is that deadline. So you get your notice of appraised value in the mail. It says what the value was last year, what they're proposing your market value for 2026. And then we'll say protest deadline, May 15th. Hearings begin June 1st or whatever it is, right? So the equalization phase, that's when we are in hearings, making sure that your property is equal and uniform, right? Equalization phase. And we're in hearings from June, July, August, September, all the way till October before tax bill gets sent out, right? So the next part is the collection phase. So in October, tax bills are sent out by the tax assessor's office, and those are usually paid and due January of the following year. So it's kind of a backwards process if you think about it, right? This year, 2026, when we are filing protests, we are protesting the values that are going to be used for your 2026 tax bills that come out at the end of the year. And so my job, or if you do it yourself, your job is to make sure that that value is as low as possible, so that tax bill is as low as possible, all right? And then Matthew mentioned escrow analysis, right? So after your tax bills go out, your lender will pay it in January of 2027. And then they'll see whether you have a shortage or a surplus in your escrow. And then they'll run an escrow analysis and let you know, hey, you have a shortage. So that shortage won't be until next year. So if you got a letter this year within the past month or so saying, I don't have enough money, my property taxes went up, that was your 2025 tax because they just paid that tax. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So briefly touching on exemptions. So exemptions are just another tool that you can use to help lower your taxes. And I'd say it's even more important than protesting. You want to make sure you have a homestead exemption. That's the most common exemption in Texas. If it's your primary residence, you can only have one. You can claim it as your homestead. And what that does, it's a partial exemption. It takes off, I think we keep voting to increase the exemption amount. I think it's 140 or 160,000 now. So let's say your home's $300,000, right? It will take off $140,000 as it applies to the school district tax rate. So instead of, let's assume that the school district is 1% of your total tax bill. So instead of 1% times $300,000, $3,000, it will say 1% times $160,000, $1,600. So it saves you about $1,400 right off the bat, right? And that's very important. Not only that, you can retroactively add your homestead exemption. So if you think, oh, I never applied for it, under the very top of the exemption form, it says, are you filing a late application? Check off yes, and you can go back 2 years. So if you were filing it today, you can apply for 2026, 2025, and 2024. And so when I have clients that hire me to represent them, first thing I do is, do you have a homestead exemption? If you don't, I say, do you want a check in the mail for about $3,000 to $1,000? It's a free form to file, and they're like, yeah, I do want a check in the mail. So get that applied. Once you'll apply that with the tax appraisal's office, the appraisal district. Once that gets picked up by the tax assessor, they're the ones cutting you the check for your overpayment the last few years. Once you turn 65, you get the over 65, it's like a bonus. And you don't have to wait till you're 65. It's the year you turn 65. So if your birthday is December 31st, January 1st of that year, you'll get the exemption, right? So you don't need to wait till you're 65. It should automatically get kicked in. Every county is different. Bear County, when you apply for your homestead, you have to put your date of birth. And so their computer system knows when you turn 65. Kendall County up the road, their technology is a little dusty, right? So they don't automatically update it. So you've got to go and actually say, hey, I turned 65 this year. And so you just got to be on top of that, right? There's a disability exemption if you have a disability, and a disabled veteran that if you have 100% DV homestead, you don't pay anything in property. And we protest those for free. So we have about a handful of properties that we just protest for the fun of it because they've got the 100% disabled veteran homestead exemption. And if you have any questions about any of these exemptions, that's about my knowledge of exemptions. I always defer to the appraisal districts. So if you have any questions, contact your local appraisal district. They have a great system that can help you with those exemptions as well. Okay, so let's run through this. Most property, again, have to be valued as of January 1st. So that's why it's such an important date. So what is the market value? How are they determining what the value is of my property? Well, they consider market value, it's just a definition, right? It's the value of which a property would transfer for cash or equivalent under prevailing market conditions if it's exposed on the open market. So if it's a private sale or it's a transfer between a family friend, I just sold it to my uncle, you know, whatever it is, they won't consider that an open market transaction. It wasn't exposed to the open market. Okay? The both the seller and the purchaser know all the use and purposes of the property. They seek to maximize their gains. And so that's what the market value is. It has to be on the open market. So I represent a lot of investors that get, you know, we buy cash for homes or junk, right? So those are a little bit harder for me because I have to say that is an open market transaction. It was a solicitation, even though it wasn't on the MLS, I can argue that it was an open market transaction. Foreclosures, I can also argue that it's an open market transaction. So the three most common approaches, and these are in the tax code, that the district is required to use to appraise your value. It's the market data, which is the sales approach. That's for single family homes. What did your neighborhood sell for lately, right? Comparing apples to apples. Income approach, that's for commercial properties, usually for apartments or anything that generates income, rents, or a cost approach. If it doesn't fit in one of those first two categories, the market or the income, you can argue a cost approach. And that's also used for if it's a new build. You can say, well, I just built this, right? Cost is how much would it cost to replace the property. So those are the three appraisal methods that the district uses. Again, for single family homes, they will look at the market approach. So when you ask for the district's evidence, they will have grids that say these are homes that we're using to compare your property. They should all be in the same neighborhood. And they'll make adjustments, and that's the value that, and it's a formula that they use.
I'm gonna lose my question if I don't.
Sure, go for it.
I apologize, but on, go back that one slide. On the cost approach.
Yeah.
What do you call it? I'm concerned, like we just got, what do you call, our house revamped for insurance.
Mhm.
They're saying it'd be $250,000 to rebuild that house.
Yeah.
I don't wanna go because the house is worth $210,000.
Yeah.
So some cost approaches like your worst idea as far as.
You won't really use it. It's not, it has to be appropriate for the type of property that you're appraising. So yeah, I get that. Every time you renew your homeowner's insurance, that replacement costs go up. You're like, man, I should just burn this place. Right? Yeah, no legal.
Don't say that out loud.
No legal, right?
A lot of people.
Intrusive thoughts, right? Okay. Yeah, that's just, the insurance is just crazy right now with everything going on kind of elsewhere in the world. That's just their, I guess, if, lumber, the cost to replace
Oh, I
it
know.
today. But yeah, you can't say, I just got my homeowner's insurance, this is my replacement cost. And let's say it's less than the appraised value, you wouldn't still be able to really use that as an argument or an appraisal. That's not an appropriate evidence for.
Thank you.
But that's a good question. Okay, so you get your notice of appraised value. It says protest deadline, it's May 15th, right? So you want to file a protest, and there's some people that have never filed a protest. So on that notice of appraised value, they should include a notice of protest form, right? Or if you create an online account through the appraisal district's website, you can also file electronically if it's your homestead property. So a property owner must file the protest in writing or electronically if homestead. It has the forms available, but you're not required to use one. That's just a side note you can put on a piece of paper. I protest my value, blah, blah, blah. Notice of protest must identify the owner, the subject property, and indicate that the property owner is dissatisfied. So when you look at that notice of protest form, and I'm sorry I didn't include one on here, it will say reasons for protest. Usually the first two boxes, it will say incorrect market or appraised value or value unequal with others. Those used to be two separate check boxes, but I think they've combined those into one, right? And so it's called VOM, value over market, and VUV, which is value unequal with others, right? Or VU. So those are the two appraisal methods, or the two protest reasons that you can protest. There's other reasons you can protest. If you had an exemption and it gets denied or canceled, usually you'll get a letter in the mail saying, we denied your exemption, we canceled your homestead. You can protest this decision. So there's other reasons to protest. But the two main ones for purposes of protest hearing, most of the 99% of the time and 100% of the time what we do is just value unequal with others and value over the market. And maybe we can look at a protest form afterwards.
Yeah, I just found where it is. So I
Okay.
can pull it up real quick when we get done.
Okay, so you get that, again, notice of appraised value, that protest form will be on there. It's so important that you get it filed and file it correctly. If you're gonna mail it, just spend $1 to get it certified, just so they don't say, oh, we never got it, right? Because it's on you to prove that you submitted it. Best bet, go in writing, hand it in person, bring a copy so or they'll scan it in right away. Or file it electronically if you can. But most important thing, you got to file it before May 15th or 30 days after the district mails you the letter. So there was one year, a couple of years ago, when Bear County didn't mail out notices until April 30th. And so that deadline got moved to May 30th. So 30 days after the notice before May 15th, whichever one is later.
And they just sent them out. So you'll probably, if you didn't get them today, you'll probably get them on Monday.
Or if your value didn't go up, they won't send them out. The deadline is still May 15th. So some values I've noticed, if you have never protested before, values actually seem to have gone down a little bit, maybe a couple thousand. Maybe that's the district's way of not having to send out letters to everybody, right?
Got a couple texts yesterday, so I think
Yeah,
they
so-
hit the mail yesterday. There's
Okay.
people in this room that texted me yesterday.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And yeah, we'll look at those notices. Maybe we can discuss those. Sure. So everyone knows how to file a protest. You use a form. If you don't have a form or you don't want to file electronically, there's a forms tab on the appraisal district's website, and it'll say a notice of protest form. That's the form it'll use.
We'll pull it up when we get done.
Yeah, thank you. Because there's a few things you want to check off on there. So again, yeah, so on this form, we'll have a bunch of reasons to protest. The first one, incorrect appraised value or value unequal with others. Always select that option. A couple other ones, again, error in appraisal, failure to provide notice, denial of ag use. Those really don't apply to us here. So what happens next is you will receive a letter or maybe an email if you file electronically, saying schedule your formal hearing or schedule your informal hearing, or here's your formal hearing date. So there's two steps. There's the informal is talking to an appraiser one-on-one, right? You usually are scheduled for an informal hearing, right? And at Bear County, if you did it yourself, I think you put your phone number and they may try to call you and say, hey, Joe, I'm an appraiser at Bear County. Do you have time to discuss your property? Or they may go back and forth by email. Every county kind of does things differently.
Are those appraisers contractors or they actually work for the?
No, they work for the appraiser. Yeah. So those are workers, appraisers from the appraisal district that are doing an informal hearing. An informal is one-on-one. That's when you present your evidence for the first time. And if you agree to settle your case, you'll sign a settlement and waiver. So yes, I presented, I want 280,000. They agree, done. You sign your waiver. That's your value for 2026. If you do not agree to the value, you get scheduled for a formal hearing, right? So if you can't settle informally, it's scheduled for a formal hearing, usually 2 weeks after your formal hearing date. And that is, instead of me and the appraiser, just us two, you're a 3-member board. And the 3 members of the appraisal review board are not employees of the appraisal district. They are just usually older individuals that like to do this part-time, and they're your neighbors, right? You have to be living in the county that you are a member of. If you want to be an appraisal review board member, they are always looking for members. You can apply to be one right away. I think they get a per diem of like $50 or something like that. And you can there's term limits on those. I think you can serve 2 3-year terms for appraisal review board members. And so at the formal hearing, they'll read in all their formalities. They'll ask you if you want to go first or second. You always say, I defer to the appraisal district to go first. You always want to let the appraisal district go first because they'll present their evidence, right? And then you get to present your evidence, and then they get a rebuttal and you get a final closing rebuttal, right? So at these ARV hearings, to always let them go first, because sometimes they may catch them off guard. Because if you go first, they're working on building your case because they are in these hearings every day for months. And so they don't get to prepare for these hearings at all, right? When they say, okay, next proper ID, pull it up, that's the first time they're looking at any sort of evidence, right? So when you present first, they're trying to, okay, let's see what I can do. Maybe I can, do something I shouldn't be doing, right? Remove a property that doesn't belong, or not conflict. So let's say you go to the formal hearing and you could settle at the formal hearing still. The appraiser may make you another offer. And you can say, okay, I agree with it. Done, right? Then that is not a formal hearing. That's considered a settlement. So if you want to go to the final step, which is arbitration or judicial appeal, you still don't like the decision from the appraisal review board members, you have the right to file arbitration or to sue the appraiser, right? I don't do that. I've never done that before. But if you want to do that, if you are one of those people like, I want to sue them, no matter what, then you've got to go all the way to a formal hearing, and you've got to let the appraisal review board members make a determination of value on the property. I'm good? Cool. So what are you bringing to the evidence, or what do you bring to the hearings? Well, it's important that you provide evidence to these hearings, right? So for residential property, market sales data. So Matthew can print out some CMAs for you, give you some really good comps. Again, for 2026 hearings, you want to provide sales that occurred from any sale from last year, 2025, up through the first quarter of this year. So don't bring a sale from 2024 or earlier. They're not going to find that as material evidence, right? So again, for residential, also personal evidence. So our job is to, you want to paint your property in the worst light possible. So if you have cracks, like even if it's a new build, I promise you, walk around your property, take up to 10 photos, find the 10 best photos that you have, and you'll submit that with your evidence.
You really want your best 10 photos?
Just the
Best
best
10
10.
best.
Yeah, the best photos you got. The most common photos we receive from clients are from property damages, cracks along the interior, exterior of the property, water damage, electrical issues, plumbing issues, even just kind of normal wear and tear, just showing that it's not been updated, could be helpful. If you have any receipts for any repairs you've done in the last year, so hailstorms, if you had to pay, 10 grand out of pocket, you would think that that might help hurt your case because, oh, I just got a new roof. Well, they'll usually discount it that first year. They'll give you, 50 cents on the dollar or whatever. And then no fences and no driveways. We get a lot of pictures of fences that are falling over. That's not considered the improvement of your property, and neither is the driveway. So don't provide photos of driveways or fences. Those aren't very helpful. For commercial property, we've got to dive into, for an income approach, we've got to dive into the books. We'll look at the net operating income, look at rent rolls, T12, vacancy rates, because what the district is doing, how they're appraising those properties, it's on an income worksheet. So they'll have what they believe your income is, what your expenses are, other income, other expenses. They'll factor in probably 11 to 12% vacancy rates, square footage, all of that. And there's a formula cap rates. So does anybody own commercial property? Yeah, it doesn't really apply. So that's, we have to get kind of in the weeds there with those clients, those specifics.
But does that still apply for residential?
No, so the income approach is only used for, so if it's a rental property, it's just a single family home, but it's a rental property, it's still it's not an income approach, it's a market approach. Okay. Even though it might be vacant, you might have a renter that is tearing the place up, that's evidence, you could say that, but it's not going to be based on income approach. That's just extra evidence you could add.
How about if it's not renting at market value?
Again, if it's a single family home, they're going to consider it a market approach, a sales approach. So they'll look at what the sales are. And then they may say, okay, taking into consideration that it isn't renting, we can offer this. They may offer you a little bit less than what it would be. If
That's
it
what
was,
we're for.
yeah.
Look for less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is kind of new. So this was the reappraisal plan that the district adopted in late 2024. And I'm not going to read all of to you, but basically it said that any successful protest from 2024 was going to be used for the value for 2025. And any value that was protested successfully in 2025, they're going to use for the value for 2026. So a lot of my clients that I successfully protested in 2024, those values didn't change, right? But then I got them down even more. And now they're not changed again, and we're going to get them down even lower, right? So even if your value doesn't change, we can get it down. And so why I'm telling you this is if you did protest last year and your value went up, slap this on there as part of your evidence. Be like, hey, on your reappraisal plan, you said if we successfully protested your value in 2025, you were not going to increase the value, and you did. So this is the last year that the reappraisal plan is in effect. It only applies to Bexar County. And so we'll see if they do something like that at the end of this year to keep it going for 27 or 28. I don't know.
They did it also in Kendall. I protested,
Yeah.
and it stayed the same for last year.
Yeah, sometimes they just don't want to mess with it, so they'll just keep it the same. They may not have issued a reappraisal plan, like a public notice. I'm not sure.
I was surprised.
Yeah. Sometimes they're just like, you know what, just blow it over.
And I was at a luncheon a few weeks ago with the chief appraiser was giving the speech, and he likes it because it reduces workload and stress on his guys. So he was just talking about some counties in Texas. I think Tarrant County is proposing doing like a 5-year appraisal window. He's like, well, that's probably too far because when people get it, their value may go up $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 into stock. So he says, 2-3 years. He likes that. So I think he's pushing on a personal level to implement this the permanent plan.
Yeah, so one of the biggest issues I found with what they're doing with this is if you have a homestead exemption, which a lot of you should, you have this thing called a homestead cap. So besides that $140,000 reduction that it gives you for your tax rate, it also limits the assessed value to no more than 10% every year, right? So for an easy example, if your value is $100,000, your appraised value and your assessed value is $100,000, the next year the appraised value goes up to $150,000. Well, if it's your homestead, it can only go up to like 10%. So your assessed value would only be $110,000. So even though your appraised value is $150,000, your assessed value is $110,000 because of your homestead exemption. So the difference between those two numbers is your homestead cap. So that property would have $40,000 in homestead cap. Okay. And so the problem with this is if it's every year that's being reappraised. So if you don't reappraise it every single year, that 10% cap can turn into a 20% increase or a 30% increase. So it could actually be really big sticker shock for everybody that doesn't protest. So that's why I even told clients, even if you agree to the value, just file a protest and then settle, because that's considered a reappraisal and it won't trigger an additional 10% stack on top of each other. So a little bit of math there, but the caps, the homestead cap We really saw that beginning in 2022, I think, when value shot up like 40 or 50%. So if you had a homestead property, you probably had a homestead cap, which meant that your appraised value went up, almost double, but your taxes only would have went up about 10%. So that was important that they did that. It's kind of gone away now. We've finally caught up with it year after year. So your appraised value should be your assessed value kind of going forward is what I've seen. I don't see a lot of homestead caps anymore. So to kind of give you my last pitch here. So we'll do everything for you, right? We will file your protest, prepare our evidence packets, attend the hearings on your behalf, and we don't charge unless we successfully reduce your appraised value. So if it's your homestead property, we also cap our fees to $150. And if you have an over 65 exempt property, we only charge at most $65. So our normal fee is 25%. So just to give you an example, let's say the tax rate is 2.5%. So if we reduce your value by $10,000, you would save $250, right? 10,000 times 2.5%, $250. Our fee would come out to $62.50. So again, we don't charge if we don't reduce your value. We also work with My City is My Home. It's a local nonprofit. So we have hundreds of properties that we do pro bono. And you can go to our website and see if you qualify for a free protest. Usually those are low-income individuals whose properties are less than $200,000, I believe. But even if you sign up with them and they don't qualify, we give 50% of those referrals as a donation. So every year we're able to donate like $10,000, $15,000 last year, I believe, for those referrals as well. So any questions about our fees or anything like that? I know every year we get a couple clients from these events, so thank you, Matthew, for allowing us to do this. But again, I always encourage everyone, if you've never protested yourself, give it a try, see what it's like. And if you said, I don't want to ever do that again, then find us, and we're happy to help. So I know I mentioned we had like 92 different counties. I'm in Bear County. My office is on Wurzbach. So out of the 5,000 properties we handled last year, about 3,800 were in Bear County. So very familiar with Bear County. This is kind of our bread and butter. Besides that, lots of Kendall, Comal, Travis, Williamson, Hayes, Guadalupe, kind of all the counties around here. And then we'll have like one property in, there's a county that signed up Chambers. I don't even know. Anyone, Chambers County, familiar with that? Hearing these counties' name, I'm like, I have no idea. It's on a map. So, because there's 264 counties in Texas. So, you know why there's 264 counties in Texas? Fun fact. So you had to be able back in the day to ride a horse from one town to the next, one county to the next in one day, right? So that's why they're all like right on top of each other. So too many counties, and it's not really fun because every county kind of has their own way of doing things, right? So it's all political, it's all business relationship, and it's funny because these appraisers kind of go from one county to the next. So my buddy Tony, that was in Comal, I filed Blanco, and he emails me, hey, Blanco County. Great. Let's do my Blanco. So, here's my info again. So let's do a Q&A. I know we have till like 2 o'clock, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. We got 20 minutes.
And if you want to take a picture real quick here, and we'll get this info to you as well, but I'm going to switch it over and pull up the Bear County website so we can send some of these forms.
Yeah, that'd actually be really helpful because there's a few things on there I want to talk about. Requesting the evidence.
Printed them.
I don't know if these are the correct ones.
That's it.
I did print that.
Perfect. Well, that's what I was going to pull up.
You were off.
So let's see here. So
Are those the right ones?
this is for counties with less than 120,000.
Which would be Kindle, right?
I don't
Because
know.
when I went to Kindle,
If you got it from Kindle,
that's what I got off the
Okay.
Kindle site, and that's what I got on.
I
the
feel
Bear
like that's
County.
gonna change soon, right? Kindle is booming. Right?
I think that was the Bear County one, and that was what I got on Kindle.
We want Kindle.
You want Kindle? Okay. Kindle County, they have so much turnover. They got a new chief appraiser about every.
Bear County?
Thank you.
Bear
I
County.
get Kindle.
Yeah, I'll get you.
On the Kindle one, double check me, but that's what I think I found on their website.
Okay.
Well, that's the 50-132. That's what's on the generic website too.
Okay.
But the big counties will do custom ones.
So I'll look at both of these real quick.
Okay. Because I'm like, don't count on me. That's just what I looked up just.
Yeah.
So on the photos, you say you gotta make copies of the photos and have a file folder?
So if you're bringing photos to your protest, usually the best thing to do is put those on a flash drive because they like to keep a copy of the evidence. And so if you, I mean, people will bring out, print out their photos of Walgreens or whatever. Usually you'll have to give that to a member and they'll have to scan those in. So if you want to put them on like a piece of like a PDF or something, scan them in, or bring them to the bring a flash drive. That's the number one tip I can provide to you.
Even if you follow online.
So if you follow online, there's a portal, you can submit evidence that way. Yeah.
But there's no way to do everything online. You have to go down and meet somebody.
You can do everything online. So online appeals, like this is Bear County's online appeals. This is what we use to file everything. So we file protests this way. And then there will be, so let's say assume you are doing just Bear County, for example, and you do file it online through the online portal. It will ask you two options: file online and complete everything online, or file online and then coordinate with the appraisal district to, work together. So I always suggest doing the second option. So if you do file it online yourself, don't do everything electronically. And the reason I say that is because you get it. There's no real your informal offer will be like $150,000, and it's either take it or leave it, right? So at that point, you can't go back and forth with an appraiser. If you select file online, but work coordinate with the district, then somebody will call you. You can go back and forth and take your time and come to a value. But if you select the first option, file online and do everything online, they're going to give you a number. And if you don't like the number, well, then they'll send you the phone hearing, and that's it. So that's a good piece of advice. So this is the notice of protest for 2026.
Yep.
Cool. And yeah, you can't go back if you just got your tax bill for 2025 and you don't like it, you're kind of out. So most important thing near the top, informal conference requested. Yes, that's that informal hearing you want to ask for with the district. And then evidence, you want to get the district's evidence. So thanks for bringing this up. You can always request the evidence at another time, but it's on this form, so ask for it. And the evidence, it will pertain to your property and it will show you all of the grids. There's two parts to it. There's the market grids and then there's the equity grids, right? Because you're filing two protests, right? Incorrect market value or value unequal with others. So incorrect market value is the neighborhood sales. What are the sales in the area? And then the value unequal with others, those aren't sales, those are neighbors on your street. So they'll provide two separate grids. These are the market grids. These are the equity grids. Whatever value is lower, that's the value you're going to get at a hearing. 99% of the time, it's market grids that are lower.
What if you just bought it and you have an actual appraisal that was just done?
So do you have an appraisal? So if you just bought it, well, sometimes the appraisal will be more than the actual sales price. So the sales price is market value, right? There's no better indication of market value than what you just bought it for that was on the market.
So if you just bought it, and you have actual just sold information, it's
Slam dunk.
slam dunk. You provide that sold information, it shouldn't be
That's
more
the
than
only
you bought
evidence
it
you
for.
need upload. Yep, those are great. I love that. But the other side is I just bought it, but I bought it for way more than what the district has. Well, Texas is a non-disclosure state. Don't ever disclose the sales price. They'll ask you, they'll send you a letter. Can you let us know what you sold your home, you bought your home for? Never disclose the sales price first off, unless it might be helpful. But then again, yeah. So then if you got a reappraisal, it could be a tool, a piece of evidence to use, but that's not market value. What is market value? If you just bought it on the market and it's within the last year, then absolutely use
And
that.
how do we submit that? We submit our closed CD, we submit our
Yeah,
sold
the signed
MLS.
closing disclosure or settlement statement, that's all you need.
So that protest form and our CD, and that's it.
Yeah, so on the bottom, you can provide, so first you'll click on incorrect appraised value. They'll ask, what is your opinion of value right there? I always leave that blank, right? On negotiation, never make the first offer. Right?
$50.
So, yeah, you then provide facts. I just purchased for 150,000, closed on January 1st, or whatever it is, right? I leave that blank too. And then how do you want to appear for the A or B hearing? So that's that formal hearing. If you want to go in person, by Zoom, by telephone conference, by affidavit, you can file a notarized affidavit. They've got those forms if you don't want to appear in person at all. I always go in person. Again, it's a negotiation. So you want to appear face to face, that's the best tactic. And we go in person. For most of our hearings, again, if we have one protest in El Paso, I do it by Zoom, right? I can make the trek. You don't have to worry about section 5. That only is for special panels for $63 million properties.
If you have a $63 million property you want to talk to, we can help you out.
And then you sign it, print your name, date it, and then submit this, right?
In the trust.
It probably says how to submit it near the top, right?
Yes, it'll have directions here.
Yeah, file this document and also document with the appraisal district in each county. So your property, so I have a client whose property is on 2 different, let's talk about this. So I have a client whose actual property is like 15 acres, splits between Comal and Bear. You've got to file a protest in Bear and Comal for each acreage. Let's assume Fair Oaks, your property sits in Bear County, but if you shuttle your kids to Comal ISD, so you get 2 different tax bills. I get a Comal ISD tax bill and I get a Bear County tax bill. It'll be about the same, right? Because if the tax rate's 2%, half of that is usually the school district. You only file your protest in Bear County, the site is of your property. So whenever I file a protest in Bear County, whatever the value is, Comal will then take that value and apply it by their tax rate and send you a tax bill. So you won't ever file in 2 different properties, even if you get tax bills from 2 different counties, unless you actually have property that spans both counties. I've never heard of like an actual like single family home spanning 2 properties.
No.
That'd be wild.
Mostly it's ranches and big stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't have a login.
Yeah.
I was gonna shout open that right.
I might. I don't know if I can remember. It's my
Okay.
portal. But so yeah, it's the online portal is very easy, and if you get, it'll ask for a web pin, or a web number or an e-file pin is what it's called. That will be on the notice of appraised value that you get, right? It'll say e-file pin, so it'll have directions on your notice of appraised value. If you want an e-file, it'll tell you your e-file pin and all that. Again, if you're going to mail it, certified mail, spend $1 just to make sure you have tracking and everything like that. Best practice, go in person, hand it in person, they'll stamp it right there.
Question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
The 65 and older
Yeah.
exemption,
Mhm.
I've read about it, I know we have it, I don't understand how. How
Okay.
does that save us money?
Yeah. Can we pull up your property? Are you in Bear County?
Yes, sir.
Do you mind if we look at your property?
Not at all.
Okay, cool.
And mine on there. All right, what's a good address?
1810, Woodbine Circle,
18.
or just, 1810 Woodbine.
Woodbine?
Yes, Woodbine.
Vine.
One word.
One way.
VINE?
Yeah, VINE, right?
Sir.
I grew up on Wood Line. I thought you might have been a neighbor.
So yeah, circle is usually circle, street, all that stuff is a big, so just, we'll pick it up.
I usually just type in, like if I'm looking at South Pressa,
More.
I just do,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4 Pressa, and then I'll sort.
You
through
have your
because-
homestead, it's
Yeah.
on there.
You have your homestead, and this other is the over 65. For legality purposes, they can't put that you have that exemption, so they just put other, right? But that is over 65. So this year, I guess you filed a protest last year, right?
We didn't.
You did not?
Oh, yes. We might have used the company.
Okay, because whenever I see a very round number like that, I think it's protested, right? Because usually before it's like $623. So whenever you file a protest and come to a value, most of the time you're coming to a very 000 value.
Roll values.
So roll value, roll value history, you can scroll down. So okay, your property hasn't changed since 2024, which is good. So just to kind of like talk about the homestead cap, right? So in 2022, your appraised value is 500,000, but you were being assessed at 470,800 because of your homestead exemption. And so the difference between these 2 numbers is 29,200. So another 10% increase goes from 470 to 517. That's exactly 10% increase, even though your appraised value also went up. So if your appraised value would have stayed the same, it would have stayed 500,000. but it went up to 544. So this increase of 10% again went to 517. And then this increase from here to here isn't very much. And so that's not a 10% increase. That's probably like an 8% increase. And that's why there's no homestead cap beginning in 2024. Your appraised value was your assessed value. So going back to.
Oh, stay there for a second, go back.
Oh, yeah.
There's a homestead.
Trying to figure out what happened there. Well,
He got to
When they bought
65.
when they bought it,
Yeah.
they really didn't it lowered a lot unless it had gone up a lot that year.
In 2024, yeah, we don't know what the value was.
We don't know what that number was.
It was probably somewhere above 550.
Okay.
We might be able to look at it.
I'll be able to.
If we go up to 24, they may have the notice of appraised value on there. But how long have you had the over 65 exemption?
You see, that's a good question. 4 years.
Okay, so for some reason, Barrett County, if you have an over 65 exemption, they won't put that notice of appraised value on the website.
No.
I think that's for the whole confidentiality.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll come on this end. So the only time you'll have a tax, so we pulled up the taxing jurisdiction tab. Here's all those taxing entities that I talked about that have their tax rates. You can see Northeast has about 1%, 0.98. The total tax rate is 2.26. The only time you'll see this column, tax ceiling, is if you have an over 65 exemption. Because the best thing that an over 65 exempt property does is it creates a tax ceiling, which means the taxes that you paid the year you turn 65 won't increase more than that year, except for the River Authority and the health system. Those two small taxing units, they don't care about your exemption whatsoever, right? So that's why your taxes may go up a little bit, but it's because of those two smaller tax rates. So you said you've had this exemption for 4 years now. So 4 years ago in 2022, whatever your tax bill was, that created that tax ceiling. So you paid for this Northeast $2,200, $2,285. If we go back, it will say $2,285 for the last 4 years, right? So that is the most important thing that the over 65 does. It doesn't freeze your taxes. It creates a tax ceiling. So if you get your value lower than what it was in 2022, it could be less. It's just a ceiling. It's not a floor, right? So if you get your value down to $400,000 for some crazy reason, the value is just plummet, then it'll be less, right? So these smalling taxing units, 0.018% with the River Authority and 0.27% with the health system. You can see that those taxes actually, I mean, it's still a significant amount, $1,100, $1,300, right? So let's think about this, $68.99. Can you go back to the top now and go to 2025? Or actually go to 2023, right? When you had a lower value. So $68.99, right? So $8,000, right? So the reason why you're paying less taxes now, even though is because the exemptions increased. We've recently voted the last 2 years to increase those homestead and over 65 exemption amounts, right? So the school district's 544,800, you're really being taxed at 39. You know, the taxable value is that because of your exemptions. Now it's even less because those exemptions, we keep voting to increase those exemptions amounts. So what we have seen is your taxes have actually been going down quite a bit. And yeah, if you go, so let's toggle down to 2025 real quick. We got a little bit of time. Right, so 40773. So that agent that you use O'Connor and Associates, I think. Yep.
You know,
I know my agent code, right? Okay. So 68.99. Yeah. They're good. They're out of Houston now. So yeah, you know, your taxes now have gone down almost $1,100 in the past few years, and that's more so of the increase in exemptions than anything, because your values have kind of gone up or stayed the same. The only thing that's changed is we voted to increase those homestead and homestead over 65 exemption amounts.
But you can still maybe do better this year because it's been stuck at for 4 years now, 3 years.
Yeah, so if we filed a protest, we would probably get this 550 down, to be honest. they may have just agreed to no change. Actually, they may not have even had an agent last year because, I mean, again, the reappraisal plan that they announced in 2024 at 550, they kept that value the same. So they may have actually just noticed him at 550 in 2025 and just value the same because of that reappraisal plan. So, and then they, again, 2025, 2026. So yes, if you would have protested your values, it may have come down a little bit, but that's why for those homestead over 65 clients, we charge at most $65 because we know it's more of a service than an actual tax savings things, right? Helps your neighbors out with their properties, keeping your values low. And if you ever decide to sell your property, they look at whatever that taxes without exemption, right? So that's the number that gets put on the, the MLS, right? So yeah, if you're comparing you and your neighbor's properties and you're protesting every single year and they're not, and their value that's almost 700,000, and you have a buyer saying, oh, this tax is $5,000 less, then it's worth it.
Does the ceiling change when it does go down? As you had said, at 65, that's your ceiling, and now you've got lower taxes coming in.
Yeah.
Does that change your ceiling?
It does, right? Because I think it was more in 2024. So because of that, you're right, it was less. So I think the ceiling, that's a good question, because you increase the exemption amounts, now those taxes are less, and it's really coming from the school district taxes. I don't know if it sets that, you know, so now it's only gonna go up. It can never go up more than 2025. I would imagine so, but I don't know. That's why I always defer to the appraisal district, because these are new laws that get in place every time of year.
2 years.
Yeah, so those laws change quite a bit of
If we
time.
could go back to like a rental property,
Yeah,
do we get, I'm trying to clarify this. We can't use the 65.
no, your 65 is only a homestead over 65 exemption.
Okay,
So it only applies to your homestead property.
okay, very good. Just clarify.
I have a follow-on question to this.
Sure.
If anybody doesn't mind. The property, when we bought it, was 3,700 square feet, but the woman who owned the property before had a 2,700 square foot house. She was into photography, so she added 1,000 square foot photography studio.
Okay,
Which is a big open space that.
yeah.
I mean, it's not even, you can't use it. as-
Can you go back to this property?
Sure.
Test your memory there.
So what's the question?
Question is, would that be a reason to lower the assessment?
So, yeah, so if you have a studio, is it a separate or is it part of the improvement?
It's all together.
It's all together. So yeah, your total value is 3728. If it's considered part of the improvement,
Is it heated and air?
Yes.
it's a livable area, then it's one, right? It's just, so yeah, that wouldn't be a great argument, right? What we have seen is, let's say you do have a little studio in the back, right? So you have a separate auxiliary unit. Let's say it's a shed, but for some reason it says additional living area, then yeah, you want to make sure that they have that correct on the roll.
I understand that, the concept of that. The only thing is, when it comes to selling the house, is we bought it like at $88 a square foot, and I think it had to do with 1,000 square feet of, space that you can just put a lot of chairs and couches.
Yeah,
So would that be an argument? Maybe.
you can make any argument you want, right? But as far as like what the district has and what if Matthew were listed on the MLS, you would put 3,700 square feet. It's considered a living area.
I would make the argument on that one if I were you, is more it's unequal with neighboring properties. Because out of your 3,700 square feet, 1,000 of it is not really functional or even or equivalent to what your neighbors' floor plans look like.
Now, that's something you would just bring the protest argument. There's nothing I wouldn't go to the roll or like go to the district and say, you need to take off 1,000 square feet. That wouldn't happen. But so this question comes up all the time. Well, my home is actually only 3,500 square feet and they have me at 3,700 square feet. If you have blueprints, that's what they're gonna ask for, or you can ask them to go to your property and sketch it themselves. Usually plus minus 100 square feet, they don't care, it's not worth their time, right? They'll say, okay, we'll give you some extra consideration at a protest hearing. But every year I have something that says the appraisal district has the square footage wrong. or we just built it, you know, and they don't know. Most of the time when you are building a property, the district members go out there and they'll sketch it themselves. Okay, so,
Question.
sure, I'll go to you.
You mentioned heating and air conditioning.
Yes.
Well, how's that affected?
They consider that part of a livable area. So if you have like a little attached area, but there's no heating or air, like a garage.
What about that 1,000 square foot that he's talking about? No.
He said it does have heating and air.
But if it didn't,
If it didn't, then I would argue that it's like a patio, it enclosed patio space.
So it should not be included. in
It
that
should not be
3,600.
considered a living area.
So that 3,600, as far as tax purpose, should not be included.
if it was not heated and cooled.
But if the function is that, and it's not heated, I don't know what you got there, a vent or whatever, and it's closed off. So it does not have heating or air. Does it retro back to 1,000 square feet less?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would ask, that's a question that I think you'd have to go to the appraisal member and be out of a protest. You don't even have to do this at a protest hearing. If they have it incorrectly appraised,
Yes.
then you just go to the appraiser, like, here's my blueprint, change this right away. You know, they won't do that you don't need to do that at a protest hearing. You can do that anytime.
And where this comes in a lot to play is when people add like a porch or a deck that's covered. Because the appraisal, they don't go to your house. They just look at aerials. And so they'll say, hey, this house had this footprint last year. Now this year it has this footprint. And they'll just say, oh, they did a wing and they'll add 1,200 square feet, just they measured the roof line of living area. Well, then you look and say, well, I did add something, but it's an open air porch, which is appraised at a different value than air conditioned, drywall, electrical living space.
Yeah, so they do have planes that they contract out that just now overhead take everything, they run against their system. And if there's an improvement that they don't have, it flags it and then they investigate a little bit.
And so if you look here, I just kind of pulled it up. This is their codes for things. And I can't get it bigger, I'm sorry. But when they'll say, hey, it's good, it's high quality, it's low quality, and they'll have different codes for what things are. Hey, you have a detached deck, you have a detached patio versus living space. So if they have a portion of your property classified wrong, that's important to notice. You know, you may put in a shed that they say, oh, that's a secondary living unit. Well, no, it's a shed, you know, it's.
But if it has heater
So you wanna-
and AC, then
I'll ask Keith that. I'll come back to
Just
you.
make sure if you have those odd accessory properties, that they just have to categorize properly and they're not billing you for something you don't own.
Can you hover over the description areas to expound what those mean? Attached open porch versus
Good, so the class is good, and then the
the column to the left.
Over here?
living area,
Right.
open porch,
Under description, you're,
Like a,
attached open
Uh-huh.
porch, yeah.
yeah, so they just,
They must have, you have an open porch on your property?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what that is.
no, I just didn't know whether you could click on it to. see
Oh,
what
no.
the-
No, they're not.
if I click on this class CD,
Yeah, I saw
it
you
just,
expand on that one, but I
yeah,
know
it
you
just
come out
tells you what the initials are.
the other one.
So I've got time for about a couple more questions. I gotta take my son to a birthday party here.
Anybody else?
Do you offer more? Do you offer more
Reasons,
classes?
does anybody else have a question that they want to specifically ask about something?
I know he's been answering raising his hand, so I'll get to your question and then maybe one more, and then we can do this again.
I'll be the last one because I got
Okay.
3 questions.
Okay, okay.
Submitting photos for evidence or as
Yeah.
evidence, that only pertains to the exterior of the home, not the interior.
Both interior and exterior.
I always thought that because the appraisal is conducted, as he's mentioned, aerial and exterior, they can actually send an agent to walk your property, but they cannot go into your property.
Well, they can't even go onto your property unless you let them down. So that's.
Right, so what I'm saying.
No, not even like 7 foot, like
Right,
on.
but you can take pictures and say, hey, I've got a crack in the
Yeah.
wall, the door frame showing foundation issue.
We got 2,000 square feet of marble floor, big cracks. They don't care about that, do they?
Yeah, they do.
It's,
I'm surprised that-
depressed, you're showing them is depressed property.
If you were to sell your home, a buyer will say, I want you to fix this, this, and this, all these
Right.
issues that are wrong with your property.
Okay,
Not just the exterior, interior as well. It's your entire improvement, which is your entire property.
okay.
You have a follow-up question on that?
I thought I did, hold on.
Yeah, take pictures of anything inside that looks bad,
Yeah.
any problem.
That's news to me. I was not aware of it. I always thought it was just the exterior.
No, it's your home. So
Right.
yeah, it's the interior and exterior.
And even though he has to leave, Matthew or
Yeah, I
I
can
might
help.
be able to answer some questions.
Yeah,
yeah.
So even though he has to check that out, if you still guys got questions, Matthew and I do have some.
Or you have my email. If you want to email me a question, I'm happy to talk to you about that.
Real quick,
Thank you very much.
on this question,
You're welcome.
But if most people enclose their garage.
Yeah.
How would that function as square footage?
So if it's an enclosed garage, they consider that additional living area.
So that is one-to-one.
Yeah, but then again, so that's your question. So if you have it as part of the living area, well, now your property doesn't have a garage. So if you compare your property to a home that does have a garage, you should have a downward adjustment on your property because they consider properties with the garages more valuable than not having a garage.
Unless everybody in the neighborhood already took away their garage.
But if you have,
That's true.
you don't have a garage, so therefore, would that reduce by not having a garage?
They say that, yeah.
So like, to answer that question, I kind of heard it. So like in this calculation, whatever the value for this living area at 3,600 square feet,
Yeah.
37, that would go up 680 because you enclosed and finished out the garage, but then you would lose this line down here. So
Garage.
you're living the blue one?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so you would
That's
lose
a
the
blank.
garage, right, and depending on, I know from the real estate side, depending on the type of neighborhood, you know, if it's a 100-year-old home in Dignity Hill, they didn't have garages 100 years ago. But if it's a home in Stone Oak, everybody wants a 2 or 3 car garage, it's gonna adjust the value appropriately in Stone Oak. If you lose your garage versus Dignity Hill, it's probably not a big
But
deal.
on the west side, it's even less.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, if you have any questions, Brian@protesttax.com. I'll be extremely busy from now until May 15th, so I'd be happy to help with your protest though, or if you are gonna do it on your own and you want some advice, let me know, I can give it to you. And again, major part of that evidence is CMA's comparable sales, so Matthew can provide those to you. Perfect.
No problem.
What do you need from us to protest our taxes?
This is.
Go to protesttax.com and sign up online. You can show my website real quick.
Yep.
And do you offer additional classes?
So we used to have our own, we used to like rent out places and do all that. So now, I've got a few brokers that I do this class to. I think this is the only one I'm doing with Matthew, unless you want to set up another Zoom later.
Well, and I have this recorded, and so I'm gonna put it on YouTube later. So it will be viewable again if there's something you can't remember.
Yeah.
All you do is just hit get started and then it'll take 2 minutes. You submit your information with us. And then there's at the very end, there is a little keypad that you sign and it puts your signature on all the forms you need. So that's really it.
That's cool.
So
And then you'll just get in touch with us if you need, do you need pictures? I mean, I don't know what.
yeah, so once you fill out this form, you'll get an email from us saying, thanks for getting started. Here's a link for a survey questionnaire. And on there, you can check off your boxes and you can upload your evidence that way as well. We're trying to go all automated.
I'll just give you this right now.
What is that? Your notice? Yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of go fill it all out and ask questions.
It just takes a few minutes, do your primary address, and then if this is the property you want to protest, you just click that. Sometimes your primary residence is not the one you want to protest, so then you put your other property on there. And then I think after that, it just has, you agree, annual contract, you can cancel anytime, 25% of the estimated tax savings. And then there's a little signature box, and that's it. And you're signed up, because there's no upfront fee.
How old's your son?
He is 5.
Is he excited about the party he's going to?
I just told him about it today, yeah.
I thought that Bluetooth stuff was all for your boy.
I have.
I added in
Hi,
my.
Ryan.
Yeah, well, I've got in a 2, and she'll be 3 in July.
Well,
So-
thanks for giving us part of your
And
Saturday.
my wife. Thanks for the father of the babysitting for the first time right now. Everyone's saying a prayer.
Awesome, yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. all the
Thanks,
time.
everyone.
Thank you. With that video recording, it'll be on the.
Yes, I could be in that too. You got everybody's email.
It does protect things to hold it down, so it doesn't just keep going.
It's not sitting here all day.
You don't touch it.
Yeah.